Welcome to class again today. Today we are looking at background of the study, and without wasting much of our time, we are going right into the study. But don't forget to subscribe to the channel, on your notification bell so that when next we drop a lesson, you can be notified. So let's go into it. Today we are looking at the background of the study. But before we go right into the background of the study, I want us to clarify a common mistake that some lecturer and most students used to make when writing their background of the study. So now let's look at it. The background of the study consists of two parts. Yes, it's made of, maybe you're surprised, right? For some, it's not a surprise. For some of us, it's a surprise. The background of to consists of two parts, namely the introduction and the background of the study itself. So, but there's a common mistake that I normally see among students or some lecturer. When they are writing their background of the study, they will title it chapter 1, background of the study. They will now come down and content it 1.0, introduction. And under the introduction, even I did the same mistake in my undergraduate work, and my supervisor did not even notice. I was not corrected, but I did the same mistake. But now that I know what research writing is, I know it, so I'm trying to show upcoming researchers they should not make the same mistake. So when they now write chapter 1, background to the study, you come and see 1.0, introduction. And under the introduction, they will now write everything and call it introduction, whereas you have titled it background of the study. It is wrong. Why is it wrong? It is because some universities used to separate it, though most universities don't separate it. But even in the universities where it is not separated, it is titled background of the study. You cannot title background of the study, you come and write just introduction and you do everything under introduction. It is wrong. If you want to do, then some universities don't separate it. So if you are from university that don't separate, what you just do is just content your 1.0 background of the study and do everything, both your introduction and the background, do it together. But if your university is a type that separates, so what you do is you content it 1.0 introduction, then 1.1 background of the study. So you see, you have to know how to do it. So it is wrong for you to come and do 1.0 introduction and do everything. No. What you do is, if you want to do everything, just call it background to the study, not 1.0 introduction and you do everything under. So that is that. So from what I've said, you now know that introduction and background of the study, they are not the same. They are different. From the explanation, even without saying it, even you know that they are different. So what exactly is the difference between background of the study and the introduction? So what exactly is the difference between the introduction and the background of the study? Now, the introduction, this is the very first part of chapter 1. It is the opening of the study. It sets the stage, captures attention, and tells reader what your research is all about. It introduces your broad idea. I hope you still remember our broad idea. When we're talking about how to choose your research topic, we made mention of the field that has trees inside. And among all the trees, you now pick one particular tree, which is your broad idea. So in the introduction, you introduce this broad idea. That is the first thing that you bring forth. And the introduction answers the question of what your study is generally about and why. That's the introduction for you. It tells, okay, why have you chosen this tree? Why choose that tree? What is the tree generally all about? That is where you do your introduction. Now, there are steps in writing this introduction. And mind you, this introduction is not long ago. It's something like maybe 3 to 4 sentences, five at most. In a normal undergraduate project, it's supposed to be just one paragraph. It's supposed to be just one. At most, if you're talking too much, it should be two paragraphs at most. So you see all these things I'm listing, you say them in just one sentence. Now, what are the steps that you should follow when writing your introduction? Number one is the general background. You must notice, you must talk about it. The opening part that talks about your broad subject as you are opening. Like instance, your broad subject is education. So you should introduce us. In today's world, education cannot be underestimated. You have introduced the main point that education is important. That is your broad area. It's your broad idea. So the next thing, after you have introduced in general in one sentence, the next sentence should now narrow to the problem area. Your next sentence should narrow to the problem area that your research is trying to address. For instance now, I will still use the same example I've been using from the beginning of the class about mobile apps and study habit. Now you have talked about education, the importance of education. Now you want to narrow your next statement, for instance, should be the global village has made social media an essential tool of communication, especially among young people. Now you have introduced the problem area. You see, social media and study habits. We say the global village has made social media an essential tool of communication among young people. You are talking that there is a tool that helps education, that helps students to learn better. You are now introducing the problem gradually. Then your next statement now, you are now narrowing, you will now go specifically now to the problem. For instance, we say, why not underestimating the numerous opportunity social media offers for learning? It is observed that it distracts students from academic work. You are now nailing the problem. That though social learning and media is very good but it can distract. It can distract. After you have made this particular statement, you now highlight the importance. Why is it important that this problem be studied, either in the society, in the field, or in your environment? Why is it important that this should be studied? Now, your next statement should look like this. A proper understanding of how social media use can influence study habits is essential for improving students' academic performance. You are now talking about the importance. Why is it important that we carry out this study? After that, the next thing you do is to transition to your study. You're transitioning to that, you are now linking it. You are linking your introduction to the study. For instance, you now say, hence, this study focuses on how social media influences the study habit of year 2 undergraduate of the University of Calabar. All these things, when you put it, they are just one sentence. When you put them together, they now form your introduction. That is it for your introduction. Now, let us look at background of the study. What is background of the study? How do you write background of the study? So now, the background of the study comes immediately after the introduction. It is the main body of the work of the background of the study. After you have done your introduction, then you now come. That is the main work. It is longer and more detailed than the introduction. Normally, for an undergraduate student, it's between 1 to 3 pages for under, but for postgraduate, it's longer. So, and it introduces your dependent and independent variable. This is where you now talk on your dependent variables and the independent variables. You elaborate, you talk on them. You bring them one after. You start with your independent variable. Well, you can start with your dependent variable, but most times it's logical to start with the independent variable. Then you now move over to your dependent variables, your sub variables, the one that you brought out of the main topic. So that's when you talk about them, and you talk about them clearly. You make them understandable. You allow the reader to understand what you are saying. The purpose of this background of the study is to provide context of the work, the context, and explain the problem in detail. It is not the statement of the problem. We are going to do statement of the problem, but this background of the study will now explain the problem in detail, because in the statement of problem you are going to state the problem, but here you are explaining the problem in detail. You are showing the reason for the study, why you are doing this study. You are now elaborating why this study should be done. Basically, this background of the study consists of one, facts. You have to put your facts. You say all the facts that you know about the problem. You are going to give figures. That is to tell you that you have to do a literature review here in your background of the study. Yes, because you are going to give figures. You are going to give statistics. You bring out your facts, your figures. Okay, in when globally, how is that problem affecting people? How many people so far globally? You bring your facts, you bring your statistics, and you now show what literature has done, what other people have done, what they have said. Where did they stop? Where did they not touch? Which question about this your broad idea, this your party, this your specific problem that you are looking at, which question about it has literature not answered? You see, as you are doing it now, your gap is now showing. Your gap is showing. Then the next thing you do is to show the gap in literature. Here, this place is another place where undergraduates used to make they do some mistake. For instance, when I was doing my undergraduate work, I went and put literature, gap in literature. I went and put it in my significance of study, and it's wrong. That's not where gap in literature should be. Gap in literature should be in your background of the study, towards the end of the background of the study. Because now that you have introduced the problem, you have brought out your facts, your statistics, your figures globally, or maybe within your area that you're studying. Now you have said what literatures have done. You are now saying what literature have not done. Definitely the gap is now showing. The gap is showing. Shey you see, your gap in literature is to be in your background of the study. So your gap is now showing. Now you now say the gap. It is after you have said the gap, that is when people now know the knowledge you have, the new knowledge your study is bringing. It's now showing the new knowledge that the study is bringing. After you have stated your gap, you now talk about why the study is timely and relevant. Why should you do it now? Why not look at something else? Why that particular problem? Why is it now? And why is it relevant? That is when you now talk about it. Now you see, before you finish saying all of this, for an undergraduate, 3 pages has finished. 3 pages has finished. Then for a postgraduate, you know that you have to do extensive literature review. You have to work very hard. Writing it is not easy, but when you put effort and you go through literatures, you take time, you give yourself time. That is why you see school will normally give you time, months to write it. So you take your time and sit down and look at what literatures have done. You ask questions from there. That's how you close your background of the study. And that is it. That is how to write your background of the study. I'm sorry, I've taken your time in this particular class. Normally, we always do 10 minutes and we close, but because this is sensitive and we need to talk more about that, is why I've taken more of your time. So, but it's justifiable the time. So, but that is it for introduction and the background of the study. Once you do your literature, you have everything. So don't forget to hit your subscription button on your notification bell so that the next topic, immediately I drop it, you'll be notified. And the next topic we are looking at is statement of the problem. We are going to talk well about it. How do you write your statement of the problem? Okay, see you in my next class. Bye bye.